This is SimNews.TV and you're listening to the Superleague Show. Well, that was a really great way to bounce back to the GPVWC Superleague, wasn't it? The Nürburgring Grand Prix, a really exciting event. Jake Sanson here to analyze everything that went down in Germany. Alongside me is Mike Pittman and Kacper Kolodijczyk. Guys, welcome.
Hi, Jake.
Well, hello, everyone.
So, what's Ben Willis up to? Where's he gone then? Where's Ben? Have we scared him off already? It's only the second half of the season. Has he got a doctor's note? Has he signed in sick? What's wrong with him?
No, I've not received a doctor's note. No.
No.
I think he's having a well-deserved break.
Right. Okay.
Whether that's from you two or just general
right.
holiday.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mike, for being a great substitute. And don't worry,
I haven't done anything yet.
That's fine. That's all right. The excuses for Ben Willis not being here are surely in the post. Right, let's get on with the matter in hand. Pre-race, plenty of upgrades from all of the teams, which basically means, Kacper, going into the 10th round of the championship season, the teams were pretty much as even as they possibly could have been going into this point of the season.
I mean, yes, it was as we have talked in the show in between the, in the middle of the break. Yeah, this is the kind of point where people saved up the points beforehand and everyone just is nearly having the second crack at it and evening out on their upgrades. Although, we also have found that some teams have invested in certain other ways which actually gave them on-track positions, which we may touch on later. But yes, it was basically a completely fresh slate, basically a clean sheet for everybody to start off again, obviously with the points coming from the first half of the season.
So what do we now make of these developments then, Mike, considering what we got to see in the early stages of qualifying? In some areas, things have tightened up, but if anything, it all seemed like, the neutralization of the front end of the grid was still very evident. I mean, your boys were still able to pop it out first and second position almost for the entire session. I mean, what is the secret?
Well, actually, I mean, yes, we were saying that all the cars have sort of caught up. There's, good 5 teams now within a couple of points of each other, total point-wise. But if you've been watching the Scrutineer, which I'm sure you all have, then you'll have noticed that we've spoken before about the front wing downforce being the key development component, and that is something that Vodball still is ahead of everyone on. But it must be noted now they are at 98%, so there's not much further to go from there. So everyone else should be able to catch them up now over the next few races. If it's purely down to that front wing downforce, as people are suggesting, then we should see, probably not for next round, because most people have upgraded for this race already, so you can't upgrade for the next one. But come Monza, which would be the next chance for most teams to upgrade, we could potentially see it really, really close, because that everyone knows that key area, and the guys like Nordsten and Hawkeye, Walters are knocking on the door of getting to the 100% as well for that stage. So I'm expecting to see it pretty good there. But yeah, qualifying itself, if that's what it came down for, my guys, yeah, I'm very happy with the qualifying, although it was disappointing not to actually get the first and second. Like you say, we were right up there for quite a lot of the session. But I can't be that disappointed when you're talking certain engine choices.
Absolutely. Are you starting to sweat yet about the prospect of that at the end of the season? I mean, we just asked you to switch hats there midstream, but there we are. Are you starting to worry? No?
No, I'm all right for the moment.
For the moment, okay.
Ask me in a few more rounds. And
I thought as much. Well, the driver market was definitely in topsy-turvy mode at the Nürburgring. There was an awful lot of musical chairs going on. Wopke Hoekstra made the move back into the Adonis seat once again, with Jarl Tyen back in Wouters. We think apparently for the rest of the season, Kacper. Now, that should be really interesting to see how he gets on alongside Gergo Baldi.
Yeah, we have talked about Jarl before, and we were kind of looking forward to seeing him more because he has shown some really strong showings earlier on in his was it 1 or 2 attempts or goes, and it's good to see him, and I think he's gonna make a great addition for the rest of the season and gonna be someone to definitely look at. And Wopke Hoekstra has also shown that he's here to fight for his places, and his starting position wasn't the greatest, but We'll get to the race itself later, but yeah, I think he has done quite well for himself so far.
So there were some interesting comebacks elsewhere. We had Maciej Mlajenek in for Street Fighter once again. Sven de Vries was back in the Storm team. I was really stunned about that one, and so were several other people. It's been a long time since Sven de Vries has raced in Super League. Tobias Olsen, that's the big one. He moved from the Hawkeye squad to Storm, which was obviously something that the admins had approved, Mike. But it's good to see that, obviously, if you're feeling a little bit out of sorts in one team, making the switch to the other one could be what makes all the difference.
Well, yeah, I think in that it's not normally allowed, but I think under the circumstances where a double world champion's been moved into Hawkeye, and Olsen has, we're not quite sure whether it was his choice to leave or whether he was, told to find employment elsewhere. But because if you bring in a double world champion in, you've got to make some space somewhere. And I suppose his DNF rate was quite high this year, so I suppose he's had to make room. But he still turned up to every race, so appealed to the admin team. Could he, Storm want to take him on, and he actually, did a good showing for it really, and did in fact battling away with Euler. I think there could be a little bit of a rivalry going on there for the rest of the season now.
I was just about to mention that. Absolutely. Yes. Tobias Olsen obviously had to make his move to Storm after Hawkeye has dropped him for the return of Lucas Euler. Kacper Kolodicic, this is potentially a really exciting move. Although, let's be fair, Lucas Euler has never run GPVWC in R Factor 2 before the last round of the championship. He hasn't won a race in GPVWC Superleague since 2014. Is this too big a comeback too far into the season?
Well, if I recall correctly, he actually did like two or three races in R Factor 2 in the first season of R Factor 2, if I recall correctly, where he didn't show that big of a showing. But yeah, I think honestly, it's a big news, and bringing him in the middle of the season, bring him back is probably the best way you can have him, and it's not even necessarily for this season, although by the end of the season he may show some really big great showings. But I think what's going to be massive is him, if he can get comfortable with R Factor 2, he could be massive potentially next year and be a key to the drivers market. So him being there in Hawkeye is a massive news. And I think he's been showing that, well, he's well worth anyway after this race.
Absolutely. And we also had in for Thomas Hinds at Red Archer. We think Thomas Hinds is now going to be out for the rest of the season, unfortunately. The Australian has obviously got other commitments. But it was Wright Kilk who made his return to Red Archer. So a lot of musical chairs, as we mentioned. In terms of tyre choice, everybody went with the Ultra Soft, Super Soft combination, except for Adonis, who decided to combine super softs and softs with medium tires, which is an interesting different direction to go through. We've already talked about qualifying a little bit in mentioning that once again, Vodball had the pace to get pole position with Rudy Van Buren, although Lee Morris very, very nearly managed to pit the pole position sitter towards the beginning of the session. So I had to wait, till the very end of the session, I apologize, to make that one count. But it was very, very tough. And it was all, in the end, then, the first part of the race, based down on the start, because obviously you guys over at Vodball, Mike, needed to make a good one. And what can we say? Both Rudy and Risto delivered to the letter.
Yeah, I remember coming in saying to you on the stream just before the race, actually, that we needed to do that. And we've had brilliant starts all season, actually. It's one of those you don't really notice quite as much if you're at the top end anyway. But I don't think we've been beaten off the line once this year so far. And we know we can get the jump on people like Morris. So it was a little bit tighter. He did get a good jump, but he still had to fight for it for a couple of corners. But it was all fair racing and got the place. And it was kind of key to the race to get ahead. And we did pull away a little bit as well, Risto, to start. We've got a couple of second cushion and just gave Rudy that confidence that knowing the guy behind is there and you can pull away and you know the pace. And we've got a lot more data that way. It's the way we'd like to run a race, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Wow, fair enough. I mean, to cut a long story short, it was a really interesting battle. Rudy did what Rudy Van Buren did. He ran off out into the distance, only did 5 stops compared to a lot of other drivers who were doing 6 or 7. And he had a fresh engine, so of course there was no real pressure on him to look after things. 48 seconds ahead of the rest of the field, lapping all but the top 4 drivers, which is pretty absolutely incredible. Up to 4th position he lapped, which is stunning display again. What was really intriguing, Kacper, for me was the battle between Risto Capit and Lee Morris in the early stages. Now, Risto got the jump on Morris early on, and for the majority of the race, that battle continued. And it was interesting because Lee Morris, I think at one stage, he was telling me after the race, the tail end of last week, he was trying out the Hungarian Grand Prix 1998 strategy Michael Schumacher employed in Formula One. He suddenly realized if I push Risto just a little bit further into the stints here, I might be able to buy myself an extra pit stop and beat him out. And that looked as though if Risto had made the distance, he would have just been it would have been very close. I'm not sure who would have got that second place in the end. It was great to watch.
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. And they were basically within 2 seconds of each other pretty much the entire time until, of course, Risto later on having a bit of an issue. But yeah, if he had managed to finish the race, I think honestly it could have been a massive battle, and it could have I think it would have been close either way. But it was definitely a very interesting strategy. And what's even more interesting is that Lee Morris tried to do that while going long his first stint. He went a lap longer and lost a little bit of time to Risto as well. So then he just shortened all of his.
So it's interesting then that, the way that the race kind of played out. I mean, do we think Lee Morris could genuinely have beaten Risto Capit on pace, Kacper? Do you think he could have done it?
I believe so, yes. I believe he was about the same. He was similar, maybe slightly better pace, and with his strategy, I think he would have been good enough on the tires, especially if he changed to the ultras, to manage to possibly catch up and overtake. I think it could have been a close fight.
Yeah, I think that would have been a really fantastic grandstand finish. But then, of course, we have to look at the interesting balance between, getting to the end of the race at all and doing so quickly, because there were several drivers who came into the race with slightly lesser engines than they should have had, and a couple of drivers rolled the dice and tried to go for it. Rudy Van Buren didn't have this problem. He had a fresh engine, but Risto Capit, 23% was his engine life going into the race, so just under a quarter. Florian Geyer in the Nordschleife, 22%, both of them out of the race. Rudy finished Hungary with a 21% engine, so he clearly decided to make the change, Mike. How badly is Risto kicking himself for making that decision?
Well, really, the way that it works now, you do have to use an engine at some point down the line in the 20s. It's just how low in the 20s they are. Rudy actually, he completed Hungary race with a 21% engine. So he started the race with a 21% engine and got to the finish and won. So it was kind of amazing, really, that actually the engine wear on these guys was higher here. It is how you drive the car as well. So, but Risto, we were very confident with Risto. I can't speak for Florian, unfortunately, but we were very confident that we'd done a lot of testing and we knew it would work. Evidently, we were wrong. So the interesting fact is going to be, it was the last race we were going to use that one for anyway, so he was always going to take a fresh one next time out. He's got no option not to now. The interesting one will be in a couple of races' time where we're going to have to use worn engines again. We're going to have to really rethink, and I think the whole grid will be now, because that's two different manufacturers as well with engine blowouts.
So here's a question for you, Mike, and I don't know if that is similar in our Factor 2, really. But would driving behind other drivers affect, for example, when he was behind Lee Morris, would that affect the engine wear in any way, considering he may be going faster in a straight line, and possibly the cooling is not going to be as good, or it wouldn't be in reality at least?
Well, we picked a very safe radiator level, so that shouldn't cause a big problem in that way. It's more going to be about your revs. So how you manage it in that way.
Possibly being in a slipstream, it could have possibly damaged the being in higher revs. I don't know. Possibly.
Potentially, like I said, it's how you drive it, and then equally the way you gears, and there's a lot. It's the driving style, which we thought we had sussed, but until we get it right, I can't tell you the formula for it really, because we don't know the answers.
Fair enough. What was really interesting about that whole scenario, of course, was that Lee Morris went into the race with a 29% lifespan on his engine. And he was telling me he crossed the line in second position, but he crossed the line with 0% life on that engine. So he genuinely would not have lasted another lap or two. And that's including the fact that he then turned down the boost the second he saw Risto Kacper pull off. So they were pushing it right to the limit as well. So, fair play to Lee Morris, who actually drove a very mature race in second position, didn't overdrive the car, didn't make too many mistakes. And he actually pushed Risto Kacper into a corner, Kacper, where he basically had to put out his A game on an engine that wasn't capable of doing it.
Yeah, that could have played a role as well. Again, pushing the car. You get to that point where even if you have practiced... as Mike said here, it could have been that Risto just pushed the car a little bit more because, again, he was under threat at all points. So, who knows? But yeah, having a drive behind you always gives you that bit more of pressure, and you don't want to be going slower and get overtaken. Obviously.
But then, of course, we could talk about the whole, battle up front with Vodbull Racing and, of course, the Lee Morris factor. But I think everybody wants to harken back to that incredible, phenomenal, amazing second round battle between Gergo Baldi and Mr. Lopez once again. Fran Lopez, I mean, these two, they just can't keep away from each other when there's a battle to be won. It's amazing. And we got to see yet another thrilling encounter, Mike. And I really didn't mind out of the two of them who was going to win. I just wanted to see which way it ended up. It was amazing.
Well, this is becoming a season-long battle now, isn't it? I mean, I think this is it's every round they seem to be on the same bit of track. They even seem to be doing the same strategies as each other. They drive very similar styles, I'd say, in that way. So that's probably how they end up on the same bits of track. But they're both very fast guys. I mean, that's. But it must be said though, it's been mainly fair. I've not seen, it's been some great battling. And in this circumstance, obviously, we saw that Baldi actually came out the better, I suppose, of it. But ultimately, it's by the end of the season, it'll be interesting to see actually where that pans out.
And of course, not only do we have that battle to look at, but we had an interesting battle further down the grid with lots of. But I have to say, it was such a disappointment for Nick Rowland. Again, he looked like he had a great car underneath him. His race was going well. And then, Kacper, we had that incident with Tobias Olsen. I mean, first of all, who do we blame here? Is that 6 of one, half a dozen of the other? Or can we genuinely point a finger? And what does that say about Nick Rowland's season? Because he's having an absolutely miserable time of it at the moment.
Well, to be honest with the season, if you're having a miserable season there, it's often unlikely. It is just a coincidence. Sometimes it is, and we've seen that with the drivers who are very unlucky, like Thomas Hinds last season and last year generally. But I honestly think that at this point, Rowland is maybe just needs to look at his way of driving a little bit. And to be honest, his drive into Olsen was I don't think you can't really blame Olsen into it for it. So if anything, it would be his fault.
Yeah, I think with that, he was just, I don't know, he was distracted with the battle ahead of him with Olsen and Minek together. I just seemed to forget his braking point and just ploughed straight into him. Can we say that this is Rowland's best result this year? This is his only finish so far. So actually,
yes, it is.
Not a great drive, but well done for finishing, maybe?
Yes, yeah. Finished the race, which is more than I've done in GPVWC Superleague, so well done. But yeah, it's not where he wanted to be. I mean, as we move on from Nick Rowland, we look at two comeback kids who I think showed some flashes of promise. Lucas Euler, of course, he had to start the race down towards the back of the grid. Qualifying was relatively okay in terms of pace, but he did a good job. He had to pit early on, and that was really what ruined his race in the end, Mike, because of course, once you get a stop go for speeding in the pit lane at that early stage of the race, you're out of position, you're down in about 17th, 18th position, and your race is just an uphill struggle from there. But fair play to him, he kept it going.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, to come back actually, and for most people, if we say it was their debut on R-Factor 2 near enough, and they came 10th, you go, fair enough, good on them. But because it's Euler, the expectation is so high, I suppose. but yeah, but you have an extra pit stop to everybody, then I suppose that's never a good sign. Interestingly, though, it looks like he'd have actually done a stop less than everybody else if he hadn't had that. So that could play interesting for the future races if he can keep his tyres lasting longer than most. Then reasonably, we could argue could have been up there with Baldy Lopez Cooper sort of battle. Well, probably Lopez Cooper time sort of battle at least. Which, Hawkeye desperately need those two cars in the points at that level. So it's still a double Hawkeye points finish, which is, they'll be much happier than what they've been having recently. But I think he'd be confident with that as a first race back anyway.
Yeah, very good point. Jarl Tyen as well. He did a relatively good job considering, again, he's only had 2-3 races built up to this point and is still, he's now basically been given the opportunity to be the permanent number 2 alongside Gego Baldi at Wouters for the rest of the season. He did a good job, in my opinion, a solid performance. There needs to be more, but hey, he's a substitute at the end of the day, and he's getting on with things pretty quickly and is still showing a little bit more of the flashes of brilliance we were hoping to see from Daniel Sharanku. So good to see. He did a good job there. Now, Florian Gaia and David Feidek, we have to kind of mention these guys, the Nordian team, because they are, the uncommon factor in the Vodbull battle at the moment, because they just keep on showing their faces to them. And this is a race where ultimately, Kacper, Nordian did not have the pace to win. And ultimately, by their own admission, they didn't really have the pace to finish on the podium either. They were very lucky that kind of the race played to them with David Feidek in 3rd position. Flo Gaia out of the race in the early stages with that engine failure. They were very lucky to bring home that quantity of points at all.
Yeah, they just didn't seem as strong as they have for a few races prior to this one, before the middle of the season. So it's kind of surprising because we were thinking that it could be the exact opposite. We were considering Norton to be one of those teams which in the middle of the season would do a lot of testing in the break and possibly come back stronger with more understanding of the tires, but this seems like maybe they took a little bit of a step backwards. But still, even if they did, they're still way ahead of pretty much everybody else. It's not even the Matt Cape, it's Lee Morris and the Vodbulls that are just so quick.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. You can talk about Nordian not doing well at the Nürburgring, but you can argue that a lot of the teams that they were beating have taken a step forward. So it's not necessarily their fault that they were caught on the back foot a little bit in terms of pace. But that's the next point I want to come on to. I mean, we've got Rudy Van Buren leading the championship, and his lead is massive. It's not unbeatable. It's 74 points, and we've got 8 races to go. He could still lose the championship. It's unlikely, but he could still lose it. Meanwhile, 2nd, you've got Lee Morris. 3rd, David Feidek. 4th, Risto Kacper. 5th, Gego Baldi. 6th, Alex Cooper. 7th, Florian Gaia. All of those drivers are separated by less than 50 points in the championship, which is incredible. And that means we've got a 6-way fight for the runner-up spot, which is absolutely incredible at this stage of the season, Mike. And genuinely, with the 8 races we've got to go, I don't know which way that's going to go.
Interestingly, you say it's for the runners-up spot. Does that mean you've given the title away?
I think it's pretty much, a stable position. I mean,
it's 3 race wins.
If it is 3 race wins, but Rudy has to have 3 more Sochis, really, for anyone to get a look in terms of the championship fight. I can't really see in Rudy's present form. He has yet to finish a race lower than 2nd. He's retired from Sochi, but he's yet to finish a race lower than 2nd for me. I don't see him losing the championship in his current form, in my personal opinion. But 6 drivers fighting for that 2nd place, that is absolutely astonishing.
Oh, it's great. Really, it really is. I mean, you saw there where we saw Florian and Risto with their engine blows have both dropped down in positions quite heavily. Risto was sat in 2nd, now he's down 4th. It's one race can turn it all, really. Most of the guys have had a DNF, and that messes it up a bit. Baldy with a couple. Morris hasn't had one yet. Morris has had points finishes every race, which is quite a good standing for himself. If he keeps that up, then I can probably see him. I was going to say I can see him getting it, but I do believe Kacper will get it. But that's I don't know which hat I'm wearing there. That's a bit.
You're wearing your ambivalent hat. That's what you need. You want him to do well, but you're also being objective. Let's talk a little bit about the pit stops in respect of the battle for that 2nd position between Risto Kacper and Lee Morris, because I want to talk about it a little bit, Kacper, in regards to upgrades. Now, there's been some good battles in the pit stops this year so far. Here, in particular, at the Nürburgring, we really got to see a little bit more of a dynamic rivalry building between the two teams in Hawkeye and Vodbull, in that there was literally only a couple of seconds difference in terms of the pit stop upgrade, but Lee Morris was able to use that to his advantage, and he got the jump on Risto Kacper by deciding to go an extra pit stop further. And it looked like, that dynamic move was really going to pull a bit of a fast one on Vodbull. Do we think that there's not only scope for the team to do this regularly, but are other teams now going to pick up the gist of this? Are we going to get a little bit more competition in terms of the pit stop strategy?
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, because we have seen, again, it was a wonderful fight, if you recall, as well. It was Capet being overtaken through the final chicane by Morris, and they both caught into the pits. It was absolutely wonderful. And then Morris stops before his pit box beforehand, and then suddenly it just seems like that pit stop from Capet was literally about 1 or 2 seconds quicker. And that makes such a difference when you're going at 60, 80 kilometers an hour in the pit lane, and it's just I think that while it may not, especially with how the season is going and how many pit stops people are doing, the 2 seconds a pit stop could be massive when you're doing 7 pit stops. Could be absolutely huge. And again, if you're having an on-track battle, you don't want to be Lee Morris, who suddenly, through no fault of his own, loses a spot on track because his pit crew wasn't quite up to spec. But then again, is that worth enough to give up on something like the front wing and upgrades? I'm not entirely sure.
It's difficult, isn't it? How do you balance that? Mike, what would you do in that scenario?
What would I do? Well, we developed the pit crew, didn't we? That's what I did. Because that is separate to your other two. So you don't have to do it differently. So you can do 2 upgrades on your car and your pit crews. You can do 3 effectively. So you don't have to not do your front wing and do your pit crew instead. You can do both. It's interesting now that actually, though, that Vodbull and Nordgen have both maxed out the pit crew tyre change time. So again, the other teams can only catch up now on that. But yeah, that was a big mistake from. There was a couple of teams, Mad K, Street Fighter, and what was Woods at the time, that were just not developing the pit crew at all. And it can be 2 or 3 seconds different each time, which when we're doing a 5-stop race, that's a lot. Adds up that. You can effectively, you think across the whole, if you were doing, say, a 20-second pit stop altogether, pit lane, everything, and you're doing 5 stops and you're gaining 2 seconds of time, you've got yourself a pit stop just from doing, you can do an extra pit stop than anyone else if you wanted to, because you're saving the time in the pits. You're not even driving and you're saving time. It's mad. But it's a very cheap upgrade, to be honest, as well. I'm very shocked that not everyone has done the same as we have. Yeah,
it's an interesting one, and it definitely, declares that obviously it's not particularly straightforward in terms of who's doing what. I'm really looking forward, though, to this second half of the season, because I think we're really going to get to see some interesting strategic races coming through. I mean, you've only got to look at the races we've still got on the calendar. We've got Spa, we've got Monza, Marina Bay, Suzuka, Circuit of the Americas, Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, the Interlagos, and Yas Marina. Those are 8 circuits that are incredible in terms of the strategy gameplay, as much as they are of great racing. I have a feeling we could see some really interesting battles, particularly in the midfield, but also looking towards that front end. Maybe there's a chance that on 2 or 3 of those circuits, Kacper, not only can Morris pull a fast one on Capet and vice versa, Fider can get in there and go for a victory or 2, maybe Florian Gaia, but maybe even Rudy Van Buren is catchable as the strategy continues to develop.
Could be, and we have seen that last season in Italy, especially on Monza. It was for the Nordstrom guys winning on strategy as well, so we could see some trickery going on, and it could be very, very interesting. And let's be honest, there are so many good tracks coming up in the second half of the season. Again, Spa, Monza, Suzuka, Interlagos, they're all such famous tracks, and they're all famous for a reason. It's going to be such a great second half of the season.
So let's talk you through the standings as they currently sit. Rudy Van Buren leading the way, a 74-point advantage over Lee Morris at the moment. let's not forget, has yet to finish a race lower than 7th this year, and he has finished all of them. David Feidick in 3rd place, just 10 points back. Another 5 to Risto Capit, dropping from 2nd to 4th. That's what a DNF has done to his championship challenge. Baldi, Cooper, and Gaia are all very close together as well. Those three separated by just 21 points, only just over a dozen off the back of Capit. Thomas Hinz is still there in 8th position despite missing this race and probably the rest of the season as well. It's a chance for people like Fran Lopez and Bent Zubanek to start making up a little bit more progress in terms of their point scores. In the Constructors' Championship, it's Vodball Racing who still lead the way merrily out in front. Nordsian Racing solidly in 2nd position, largely because of those 6 drivers in the battle for 2nd place, 2 of them are from the same team, and that team is Nordsian. Mad Cape, Valters, and Hawkeye, they all have one solid pair of hands in their championship battles. Mad Cape, of course, has the Morris, Valters Automotive has Gergo Baldi, and Hawkeye Racing has Alex Cooper. So it should be really interesting to see how their teammates, some of which have obviously been shuffled around a little bit, can make the difference here. Nick Rowland needs to start scoring more points for the team, or 3rd place for the squad is going to be in jeopardy from the likes of Jarl Tyen and Lucas Euler. That is where Mad Cape really need to bring things around again. It's very critical at this point in particular, Mike, that that Mad Cape are bringing 2 cars home in the points regularly.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be pretty worried with them at the moment if, having seen the signings that Walters and Hawkeye have done over the summer break, if they can, and they both scored double, well, in fact, all 3 teams did get double points, but Roland's only a very lowly 13th, but meaning that if Walters and Hawkeye can score 2 cars every, or most races going forwards, the gap is, 30 points between 3rd and 5th? I mean, that's absolutely nothing when you're talking, you get 25 for a win anyway. So if you get 2 cars finishing, you can be really up there. They're just very lucky in Mad Cape that Morris is scoring consistently podiums. So he's getting high points, not just, some points. So if he can carry that on, though, he can. It doesn't mean that Roland has to score amazingly high finishes. He just needs to score and finish, and they might just get there.
So let's analyze the Nürburgring very quickly then by saying team of the weekend. Mike Pittman's biased, so obviously he's going to pick one and one only. That's going to be Vodball. Kacper, can you argue with that?
Team-wise, not really.
I actually would argue with it myself.
You would argue with it?
Yes, I would.
These are flaws in your strategy.
Well, because ultimately I got 1 car to the finish. I don't think... And it's not like it was an accident. It's something that was within our team's grasp somewhere along the line. Nordson did the same mistake, so I can't give them it. Roland didn't do a good job for Mad Cape. Can't give them it. I look at Walters and go, that's my team of the week.
Okay, so Valters Automotive gets your vote. What would you suggest, Kacper, then?
I think that's... yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, isn't it, Steve? Possibly Hawkeye, but not even then. It was the first race of Euler, and we have had a 6th place as well. So I'd say honestly, it's kind of a even playing ground, this race. And while you did mess up with the Vodball, I think that you're still, you still have the win, and you still have. We've seen so many mess ups, and I think it was one of those calculated risks that we have seen teams do and fail. And yeah, I'd say Vodball, to be honest.
The other one I want to give a little shout out to is Storm Racing, who scored their first double points of the whole season so far.
Yeah.
So well done to them.
Really good result for Storm, and we're delighted that new driver lineup definitely seems to have made things work. So excellent news. Driver of the... This is a difficult one because there's quite a few drivers you could pick for this one. Obviously, Rudy Van Buren is the obvious choice. Let's suggest that we've done this too often now. Rudy has been driver of the day a few times. Who would be your driver of the day if not for him? Kacper?
That's a tough one. But to be honest, with I was really, really highly impressed by Morris. I'll be honest that he has actually kind of really blown me away with his pace this race. He's been bringing he has brought the car in 2nd place, and he was challenging for the 2nd place. So I'll be honest, I'll give him that.
Yeah, I suppose it's his second place since Australia, the very start of the season. Is it easy to argue, Mike?
Well, if I can't, I definitely can't give it to Rudy. Yeah,
Yeah, you're not. No,
because that was it. That was just faultless. But
that ship has sailed.
if
We
it
know
wasn't-
he's dominant.
fair enough. If it wasn't him, I can't pick another world. Well, I can. Yao Time. He gained 14 places. The guy starts. He's just got used to back of the grid penalties now. Almost. He drove almost faultlessly. He only did 5 stops like Rudy did. Everyone else in front of him did a couple more. So I think if he can have a good qualifying session and find himself in the about 6th or 7th in the grid somewhere next time, we could really see him on the podium soon.
It's a very good point. Okay, who was underwhelming? Who got it wrong? Kacper, who are we pointing the finger at and going, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear?
Ben Horrell. Retirement lap 3. 6 out of 9 races this season. Retirement, not good enough.
Okay. Simple, damning, but blindingly obvious. Mike Pittman, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that one, isn't it? To be honest, that is quite disappointing. But where else are we going with that? I mean, Benefield didn't exactly show himself in glory. Made a error where he did his he went into neutral on his gears, pretty rookie error, and blew the engine. That's his fault, not the car. But up until that point, he was doing all right. So I suppose it's one of those. It's one. Do you damn a man for one small error? I suppose DNF you do. So yeah, hard to argue against Ben not being the worst this time out. You don't get past lap 3. I think that's a bit disappointing. But yeah, otherwise, small. Benefield needs to take a look at himself, I think, and come back stronger next time.
Makes sense. Does make sense. Okay, I'm going to be. Ooh, what do we do there? Well, I suppose my team of the race has got to be probably Madcape. I know Nick Rowland was not where he should be, but that's driver related, in my opinion, not necessarily team related, considering they went up against Vodbull in a head-to-head in terms of strategy, not looking like they could do as well as they did. The fact that they did shows that, you know what, that's not bad going for me personally. I think they really stepped up to the plate and did a cracking job at going for it. Driver of the day, for me, it's either going to be Lee Morris or Fran Lopez. I actually thought Fran Lopez, on a completely different tyre strategy, was able to run very, very strongly with some very top drivers out there. He gave Gergo Baldi a great run for his money until he decided to consolidate and hang on to that 5th place. He beat some good drivers out there. Alex Cooper, Jarl Tyen, Lucas Euler, double champion. He did a good job. Fran Lopez was in his A-game mode at the Nürburgring, and it was great to watch. In terms of who let people down, I don't know, really. It's a difficult one because it wasn't exactly an embarrassing race from many people. It was just one of those races where it just kind of unfolded. I suppose Nick Rowland. I'm sorry. At this point in the season, you have to be able to bring 2 cars, especially if you're in the fight for the top 5 of the Constructors' Championship. You have to have 2 cars even with each other, bringing home big points. And Nick Rowland is the weak link in that team's armor. He is it's so critical at this point when you look at the fact that Madcape are battling for that 3rd position in the Constructors' Championship. And they are letting it slip. They are being caught hand over fist at the moment by Wouters and Hawkeye. It's critical. They need to either give Nick Rowland an increasingly large punch in the gob to get him to actually move further forward, or they actually need to consider replacing him. And I don't know which is going to be the easiest thing to do at this point in the season. So it's tough. We'll have to figure out what the implications of all of that are, though, because, of course, next week we do it all over again and we go to one of the coolest race circuits on the planet in history ever, Spa. How on earth is the championship going to unfold here? Is this going to be another Rudy Van Buren hunting ground, Kacper?
Honestly, I think so. I don't think we've seen him be weak on any type of circuit, and Spa is one of those circuits which, it's one of those circuits where you have to be on it, and it's really quite a driver-centered circuit. It's very difficult to do it right, and from what I've seen from Rudy Van Buren, he definitely does not lack the talent to be the quickest out there.
Okay, how are you guys looking in terms of the general status of play at Vodbull, Mike? Are you guys looking confident for it? Is it just another race, or are you actually coming into it really quite nervous.
I don't think Spa's ever just another race, is it? But it's I'm quite confident with it. I think actually, from initial thoughts, it's going to be a bit controversial. I'm going to put money on this being Risto's first win of the season.
Oh, you've said it now. You've said it now. Interesting.
That's my call at the moment, but we'll see how it unfolds. It's got a fresh engine coming in as well, of course.
I just hope it's not going to be a team orders or anything.
No, we don't want one. Oh,
just to prove me right.
I'm sorry, if you do the Schumacher Barrichello thing on the pit wall at some point during this season, you're off the show. It's as simple as that. You're off the show. You will not be welcomed back. It's as simple as that.
That seems fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
The amount. I generally feel for Risto. I think the amount of work that I know the guy puts in behind the scenes is incredible. The work rate is the most I've ever seen from any driver I've ever worked with. And to be honest, Rudy wouldn't be doing half as well as he is without the teammate he's got as well. He is still an amazing driver, but together they're such an incredible force. That no disrespect. I don't think, ultimately we're now at the stage where we are quite comfortable in both championships, so we don't need to take certain risks sometimes. So we have. It does change our mentality of the second half of the season a little bit, I suppose.
Pretty awesome to consider that that's going to be our next port of call. I'm really looking forward to it. And how good are the drivers in the GPVWC Super League? Well, we have a little bit of an answer for you, because we always have this debate, don't we, that the GPVWC, well, how good are the drivers in it actually in the big grand scale of things? I've been looking at the world's fastest gamer standings at this precise moment in time. Can I just point out Rudy Van Buren, P4, Lee Morris, P10, Risto Kacper, P11. Need I say more? The best in this championship really are amongst the very best in the world, and that's why we get so excited about it. It really is absolutely superb. Don't forget, of course, to follow us on Twitter at SLShowSN, and if you want to interact with us on any of the shows, use the hashtag SLShow, and of course, give me old mates a like on Downforce UK as well. We're going to be continuing to increase the coverage, both commentary and written, over the course of the summer for the GPVWC moving forward. My name's Jake Sanson. Those two men beside me are Kacper Golodijic and Mike Pittman. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jake.
Thanks a lot.
When we get to Spa-Francorchamps, it could well be the Rudy Van Buren show take 2, or it could be the Risto Kacper show, or it could be somebody else. Whatever happens, we're all praying for rain. Yes, you heard it here first. We're all praying for rain. If it happens, you want to make sure you join us next Thursday live on YouTube at 7:30 p.m. Don't forget to check out Formula Challenge and Super Cup as well. The Scrutineer is, of course, coming shortly as well. Keep up to date with all of the upgrades and all the technical jiggery-pokery in the GPVWC Super League with that show. But from all of us here on the Superleague Show, I'm Jake Sanson on behalf of the whole team. Thank you very much. Come back soon, Ben Willis, and we'll see you soon.